Welcome to Conscious Woman Rising the Conversations podcast. I'm Deepika Delmenico, founder of Conscious Woman Rising and host of these podcast conversations. And today I am delighted to be in conversation with Susan Burrell. Susan is an author, an intuitive healer and guide who loves supporting women in their inner growth toward finding their own true empowerment. She's about blossoming and stepping into the power of oneself. And that's what we're all about, right? So, welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me, Deepika. I'm excited to see where we go with this.
So am I. I'm excited to be in conversation with you and see where we go as well. So, part of your work is that you work intuitively. And that always lights me up and excites me because that's working with a higher intelligence, that's working with our superconscious. And so I'd love you to, I guess, share a little of how you got to be where you are doing what you're doing.
So I guess I've always been intuitive, but as a little kid, like, age 3 or 4, I was told not to be that, right? Don't do that. Don't. I would just speak out of things I felt about people or kind of, I don't really see things, but just this feeling tone. And boy, my mom, just that made her so uncomfortable for me to be like that. So I spent a lot of my younger years, really my then young adult years, just constantly squishing that intuitive guidance that was always bubbling up, but I was disallowed, to feel. And I didn't really realize I just thought everybody felt these things. And to be honest, Deepika, I think they do. I think so many of us are intuitive, but because it makes other people uncomfortable, they push you away or shut you out. So, in fact, I remember a colleague of mine, I hadn't seen her in a couple of months, and we went to, I was joining her at an event. And as I was standing next to her, I kept feeling this just not good energy coming off of her. And I looked at her and I said, "Are you okay?" I hadn't seen her in months. Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And she stepped away from me. And then I come to find and didn't want to talk to me. It was like, and I come to find out like 6 weeks later, she had cancer. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what is going on? So that happens to me a lot. And I finally, after a heart-shattering, contentious divorce, as I was building myself back up from the inside out, realized that I have it's a gift and it's a skill set that I can employ. And so when I work with people, I'm often, people always, we all have stories, right? We all have our story that we want to either share or, share so we can get agreement how bad that story is, or share so we can get agreement on,
collusion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I realized that when I have clients that come to me, I'm listening on multiple levels. I'm sure this happens for you, where the story's running, but that's not really what they want. That's not really why they came.
Yes.
They really want help. They really want to see a way out of the story. And so I just listen on different levels. And if I'm guided, often I'm guided to do guided meditations. And when I first was doing that with clients, they didn't understand how a guided meditation I was going to lead them in would help them, until we went through the meditation. And afterwards, when they were leaving, they felt like, they felt better. They felt a burden lift, or parts of themselves come back. And, and I have a lot of meditations on an app called Insight Timer, mm-hmm. that are just, they come through me. I don't write this down. I don't make it up. It just comes through me. And so that's what I do when I'm working with clients too, is let's see if we can get to the crux of the issue without having to go over the story again.
Beautiful. I love that, because you could spend a lot of time and energy and your clients in telling the story, going through the story, finding solutions for the story. But what I appreciate about what you're saying with these guided meditations or these activations is that there's an invitation that's inviting the people that you work with to drop straight in to this inner higher dialogue where their own solutions and their own healing solutions and remedies come from.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of people are afraid of that. A lot of people have been taught not to trust their inner guidance, not to trust their inner wisdom. The wisdom of the heart is what I call it, or it's a divine wisdom, right? And we're taught not to believe that or trust it. And so we look outside of ourselves for the answers, but the answers are never really outside of us.
No.
They're always inside of us. Maybe somebody is outside of you that can help you go within, but they're always within.
Yeah. So do you think that, that whole moving away, shutting down, stopping listening to the sensations or the feelings, or however intuitively we're receiving this communion or this downloading, whatever you want to call it, is a lot of that starts with, as you were describing when you were little, because it's not conventional or it's not comfortable for our caregivers or our guardians, or it doesn't fit inside the box in a school classroom or a kindergarten, or at a family gathering, or on and on and on it goes.
Well, it's interesting because I believe our generation, at least in America, we were taught not to feel our feelings, that it's not appropriate for you to feel angry or sad, or, and so I spent a majority of my life just not expressing my anger or rage, because then it became rage. If you don't express it as you're feeling it, and I don't mean you go yelling at somebody, but at least just go in a room, stamp your feet, scream into a pillow, and experience the anger. If you don't experience it, it builds up and it becomes rage. And then, as I discovered, it becomes disease, right? My body was out picturing so many different diseases. When I was going through divorce, I had hives, never had a hive in my life. I had hives from my eyelids to my ankles for 1 year.
Wow.
Nonstop. And doctors, were wanting to say, oh, you touched something or you ate something. Or no, it was unexpressed rage.
Yes.
And so feeling our feelings, as I have learned over the last 15 years, is so important. That includes grief and the other emotions that come behind the grief or with the grief, like anger and guilt or that kind of thing. And because as we feel it, we're human, we are spiritual beings here on planet Earth. We chose to be here, and our soul chose to bring us here so we can grow and evolve and over eons, multiple incarnations. And so part of the growth is allowing your system, your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual system to experience living on planet Earth. And that means experiencing the emotions and not shutting them down, but allowing them to flow through your experience, because the emotions are usually pointing to something else that is a gift as a lesson, or a lesson that becomes a gift, or that something you're not paying attention to, like, you're looking for a new job and you're looking for the same old job, but really spirit and your soul growth wants you to go do this brand new thing. So if you're not paying attention and your emotions get in the way, then you often digress off your soul path.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely setting yourself up to repeat the same patterns and keep getting what you're getting, right? And then, as you say, whether you break out in hives or, there's just infinite expressions of how messages can manifest physically in the body.
Well, it's interesting too, that you mentioned the word invitation,
Yes.
because that just dropped into one of my, I journal and meditate every morning. It's my spiritual practice, among some other things. And the invitation to be invited dropped in, because I took 2021 off from any kind of business, producing products and classes and teaching. And I just did a very deep inner dive and inner excavation to what's keeping me stuck. Where am I not feeling happy? Why am I not where I thought I would be at age 60 something? And that was, I ended up doing all sorts of work with the elementals and angels, which I'd never done. And, but also with generational ancestral behaviors and beliefs, and just cutting cords and healing that area. And the idea of being invited now, invited to be who I am. Wow. Instead of making myself be who I am, and it's so much work, but to be invited to just naturally, you used the word blossom earlier, naturally blossom into this person that I have always been meant to be, but I was working so hard I couldn't see if I had arrived yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you're even enjoying it, enjoying
Right.
the ride. But I love that. There's such a softening in what you've just shared, that if you didn't yield to the invitation, were you being soft enough to receive what the invitation is wishing to gift you or give you? Or are you just forcing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you continuing to force? And I love that this is where we're going, because this is, of course, how so many people, this is how so many women, this is how so many people listening have become accustomed and very familiar with living their lives. And the concept of taking time off, the very concept of saying, hey, I'm stepping off the treadmill for a while, and I am seriously going to dedicate myself to what's going on in my inner landscape. I mean, my gosh, it's so courageous.
When I did it, I have a very strong team that helps me with my podcasts and my guided meditations, getting them out there in the world, and my book and everything. And it was like we finally got it well honed machine. But I went, you know what, I cannot do one more ounce of producing something, like a class or workshop, or I had produced a retreat, and I'm like, I'm done. I got to step off. And I thought it would just be for 30 days. I told them, just 30 days. You guys keep everything running. Well, they've kept everything running for a year.
That's a good team. You've got a good team.
Very good, loving, dedicated team. And I'm so deeply grateful for that. And so what I'm learning is, of course, the way I came in, or the way I was taught to be successful, was based on the masculine paradigm, of get it done and work hard, and you've got, don't let them see a sweat, but of course you're sweating bullets, and all that stuff. And this, because of the divine feminine energy that has really been clearing us, kind of in a, might not feel very gentle to most people way, is beginning to, for me in my life, I'm now learning, okay, if it doesn't feel right, if I feel like I'm swimming upstream, then I know I'm not going in the right direction, and I need to just sit. And that's, for me, the softening that you mentioned, just being quiet and still and sitting, because I can no longer force anything, and that's why I got off the treadmill in 2021, because it wasn't getting me anywhere. And in this softness, in this, now listening for the invitation of what's mine to do next, or even just being open. I was reading something today, I've done this before, but I was reminded this morning about being open to receive the invitation. Because if we're so busy, we're not even listening to what spirit is whispering to us. We're not even hearing that, hey, it's time to go sit and walk among the redwood trees, or, which I'm going to do in a couple weeks. But, it doesn't, if we're not listening within, then we can't hear what the invitation actually is. And it's always a good invitation. It's
Yeah,
always
the
a fun
universe doesn't
invitation.
usually give you crappy invitations.
Right.
They're pretty good ones. And I'm just so resonating with everything that you're saying. And it does begin with listening. It all begins with listening, because how can we interpret these whispers, these callings, these divine guidance and instructions that are wanting to be given to us regularly, that are part of us, that are aligned with our nature?
Well, and listening also for me, I learned this years ago, but I am constantly reminded of it, is to deeply listen when others are speaking. So that as I want to be seen, I need to see you, right? And then the reciprocation begins in that deep listening of whatever is in that particular conversation, or whatever needs to be said. That's my prayer before every time I record a show. It's my prayer when I work with clients. Divine Spirit, help me to hear what needs to be heard and speak what needs to be heard for the highest good. Beautiful. So that I am in service always to the highest good. And in deep listening to myself and to my spirit guides or angels, and just really being open to listen, then I can also listen to others and be of service.
Yes. And there's softness and opening in that too, because you can't force listening, and you can't listen from a busy mind that's trying to be problem solving constantly, or a mind that's doubting, or a mind that's in the how, or a mind that's just so enraged or inflamed or full of fear, or it sort of goes on and on and on. But how can you really be present if there's not a space and a quietude or a beingness?
I had a client who came to me continually while she was going through divorce, and she would start the story. As soon as she sat down, she would start the story of whatever, and then she would second guess herself. I mean, it was fascinating to watch. For a good 15 minutes, I'd let her run, because she'd start the story, then she'd second guess herself, and then she'd twist back around. It was like she was a pretzel inside her brain, and then consequently wasn't getting anywhere, and wanting me to give her the answers, which then she'd go, oh yeah, you're right. And I'm like, I'm not telling you any answers. You have to find it within yourself, but you've got to stop that pretzel mind that her self-doubt was so deep, and it did take her time. It took her sitting and listening as much as she could at that moment to really begin to be present with herself.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect moment to ask you about, you've written a book, To Live Your Empowered Life.
Live Your Empowered Life.
Live Your Empowered Life. And it's a journey with a workbook. So it's obviously, this is about, there's a structure and a way to find one's own solutions in this, right?
Yes.
Can you share a little more about that?
Well, the book came out of my own personal experience, excavation and healing when I was going through that divorce. And so it's got affirmations and journaling prompts that I did myself, and I know that they work. But it also is about giving yourself permission to journal out your story, because I really believe you've got to get rid of the gunk in your head. So if you journal it out, not to reread it, not to go back and pick it out, but eventually just get it out of your way, then you can actually face the things you're afraid of, or you'll find that the things you thought you were afraid of are not as scary. And so it kind of walks you through all those things. And then eventually it asks you questions about empowerment. Where is your self-esteem? What is your purpose? Where's your sense of wonder? Are you feeling shackled by someone or a belief system? Are you feeling caged? And it interacts with my website because I have a lot of guided meditations to help people. I personally never like doing this kind of work by myself. When I have to do this work, I call a support group. So last year when I stepped off the circus wheel, I called a group of very, very highly tuned practitioners to do prayer work on my behalf. And we've been meeting once a week in consciousness with prayer intention. And we do prayer intention for each other at the same time once a week. And it's transforming our lives. So I believe that it's important when you do begin to look within yourself to have someone with you. So it's the book interacts with me at my website with videos that help you learn skill sets like tapping, EFT, mind mapping, which is a great tool for kind of stream of consciousness writing, and you can get out of the linear mind and really listen to what your soul or your heart wants you to do. And that helps you develop whatever your new purpose is in life. So you end up having moved through some belief systems, pulling them up by the roots and looking at them and seeing what you want to keep and what you want to throw away, but also then having cleared your life purpose again. So when you finish the book, you know where you're going, right? You know what the next journey of your life is. And it's because that's what I had to do for myself in order to come out of that divorce. And it was a divorce after 28 years of marriage. So I did not know who I was for 28 years, or I had a good idea, but then I was told that's bull. That's not who you are. So, I just want people to really begin to feel, and a lot of women, because so many women don't allow themselves to know who they are. They define themselves according to their family or their husband or their job, but not according to themselves. So that's why I wrote the book, is to share. And I always have to I always have to go through it myself. I guess I'm like the taste tester for the queen or something. I got to make sure it works before you can have it.
Yeah, it's really calling on, in the excavation, to take your word, the excavating, to get down to who am I beyond what I'm identifying with myself to be. And in your instance, it was ripped away, it was shattered. You used the word shattered at the beginning. So it's like, well, that identification, it's dissolved.
Yeah.
It's not there. So there's this beautiful invitation to if everything that we know and identify with is taken away from us, who are we?
And a lot of that often leaves me, or used to leave me, kind of hanging in the wind. I don't know. And I remember when I was going through divorce, I had a couple of friends that would take me out for a bottle of wine, and listen to my story. And they would say, well, what do you want? What do you want in life?
Powerful question. Such a powerful question. What do you want?
And it would always knock me over because I didn't know what I wanted. Yeah. How could I know what I wanted when I didn't even, and that's what came up was, I can't know what I want because I don't know who I am. So I had to learn who I was. I had to begin, that was the excavation, and facing the fears, and begin to accept I'm an intuitive, instead of shushing it and pushing it down or feeling bad when I've offended somebody. When I say, are you okay? I had to accept it and own it. And I still have to own it, there's times where people, I can see right through them, and they, and some people don't like that, especially if they're hiding their little sneaky stuff. But
But it's
yeah.
okay, because we've all got our little sneaky stuff.
Yes, but some people want their sneaky stuff to stay sneaky,
Yeah. Well, then it's got the power. Then it's
right?
running the show. Then it's
Right.
running the show, and they're not. Yeah. So I'm loving what you're saying. In order to be able to know what do you want, you had to have a sense first of, well, who am I? And it makes sense, because otherwise you are creating what you want from a false vision.
Which, yeah, I think for me personally, and I would imagine this is true for so many, that's what I did most of my life.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be this. I thought I was that. But none of those ideas of me really came into a rooted, yes, this is who you are, until I got out of that marriage
Yeah.
and began to realize who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, I mean, people, women, all human living beings at the moment, are called since time immemorial to be established in the business of being themselves. But collectively, there's so much uncertainty, unpredictability, so much change, that it's the perfect time to go in, because everything outside is just sort of feels like it's distracting for so many, and I guess it is. But what am I saying? What you're talking about, everything that you're talking about, is going into that inner landscape, is turning within, and that it's the only way, despite the intensity of the times that anyone listening finds themselves in at this moment, despite the shitstorm or whatever's going on around them, despite that, if they turn within, and even listen to some of your guided meditation, then a sense, a feeling, a quality will make itself known.
Yes, and often that quality will be a sense or a feeling of peace,
Peace.
right?
And isn't that where the healing and the solutions can come
Yes.
from?
And the more of us that can drop in frequently within ourselves to ground in a sense of peace or love or forgiveness or joy, the more we do that, the more that one individual becomes that beacon, that broadcasting station for the many. And it's fascinating how the world is just in, like you said, a shit storm. And it's not just one place that has a shit storm. It's everywhere. And we can choose to just put our heads in the ground and hope that the shit storm will pass over us, which it does on a daily basis, because we're all connected and we're all energy systems. And so if you're feeling uncomfortable, you are, because that energy, it pervades the planet, not just the country it's in. And so then I really believe, at least my work is to drop into joy or drop into peace and blanket myself and my family and blanket my city or the world with this feeling tone, this high vibration of love and peace and harmony. And anybody can do it. You don't have to be an intuitive whatnot. Anybody can do it. And now's the time, because the amplification of the discord, that's putting it nicely, the amplification of the discord. I thought it was bad 5 years ago. It's just becoming, and I keep thinking, okay, but eventually it'll end. And when we moved into 2021, and I think that's why I also had to go quiet, because I went, oh, this wasn't just 2020 being a crappy year. This is a decade. It's a decade of all of this stuff, all the layers being peeled, all the truths being revealed individually and collectively, for us to really begin to wake up and choose who we chose to be, right? To really recognize, I chose to be this person before I even incarnated, and I'm going to honor that choice now. I'm going to be more love, as opposed to, hating my ex-husband and, wishing him harm. I'm just going to be love and be more of that. And that's what's being called on the planet, even when you're in the middle of what some of these people are going through. It's heart-wrenching. But if you can be love more than buying into the turmoil, I just feel like we can all make a difference just in raising our vibration in love.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And it's what you're talking about is the power of love. And so if people are feeling disempowered, and your work is all about empowering, and we were designed by the divine to be empowered, then open ourselves to love, open ourselves to more love, and it is possible, and it is powerful, and we do make a difference.
Yes, and I think that
Regardless.
the people that have made a difference in history, I'm thinking of Gandhi and the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa and some of the mystics of the past. Their focus was on a higher vibration of love. I would call it love. They might call it peace or, forgiveness or something like that. But in order to really help heal the planet, we have to rise up in that kind of a vibration.
Yeah, and that's what it is, isn't it, that you're speaking of ultimately. Like, we can use different words to describe it, but it's a quality, and it is a vibration, it's a resonance, it's an intelligence, it's
Yes.
a light, it's and it's, I believe it is who we are. So
Yeah.
why do we resist getting to know it more fully?
Yeah, I've said this before. My mom was a big musical theater person, and on Sundays, they would show a musical, and she and I would sit in front of the television and watch whatever musical, and her favorite was South Pacific. And in South Pacific, there is a song that he eventually took it out of the movie, or sometimes they cut it out of the movie, but it is a song, and it's called "You Must Be Carefully Taught," and it's about racism and belief systems and how we are carefully taught by our families, our friends, our governments. So we must be carefully taught. And I would love if we could be carefully taught to love more, to forgive more, to find equanimity and balance, as opposed to all of those other negative,
Yes.
disruptive.
Yeah, that's the curative education, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. We could just talk on and on and on. I love you come from. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So thank you, Susan. And how do listeners get in touch with you? How do listeners, find out more about the guided meditations that you're speaking about?
They can go to my website, Susan Burrell at BURRELL.com, and you can find my guided meditations. There's a icon of the Insight Timer. You can click on that. It'll take you directly to where they're all stored on the Insight Timer app. Or you can also listen to my Empowering Chats with Susan Burrell.
Great.
And you can see what classes I have coming up. And if you get the book, that's where all the videos and guided meditations specific to the book, Live Your Empowered Life, a 30-day journey. That's where they all live.
Beautiful.
So yeah, and then you can see what I'm up to. And if you join my newsletter, I have a guided meditation called out of the box thinking that you will receive as a gift.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for being in conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much. And
you.
so much love to you and to
Thank you.
everybody listening in.
Thank you. And right back at you with a big hug.
So thank you everybody for listening in to this conversation, the Conscious Woman Rising, the Conversations podcast. And you can subscribe to, follow the podcast, and you'll receive the latest episodes as they become available. And check out Conscious Woman Rising at deepikadelmenico.com and all the wonderful, empowering, loving offerings that are available for you.